Welcome everyone to the Metrics International Forum. The forum is organized by the Meta Research Innovation Center at Stanford, or Metrics for short. The center is directed by John Ioannidis and Steve Goodman, and we are a research group and fellowship program dedicated to finding ways to improve the validity and transparency of scientific research. I'm Lena Koppel. I'm a visiting postdoc at Metrics, and I will be today's moderator. All of the forums are recorded and can be accessed on the website. Please mute yourself during the talk and keep your questions until the end, or write them in the chat during the presentation. So our presenter today is Constant Vinatier. Constant is a second-year PhD student under the supervision of Florian Naudet, focusing on the impact of open science practices on the reproducibility as part of the OSIRIS project. And prior to this, Constant completed a pharmaceutical study with a specialization in methodology and clinical research. So he has a master's degree in modeling in clinical pharmacology and epidemiology. So without further ado, I will leave the floor to you, Constant.
Thank you for this presentation. Hi everyone. Tonight I'm going to talk, tonight for us in Europe, but for the morning to you in USA. I'm going to talk with you about the fact to using a reporting guideline to improve the reproducibility of cooking Christmas tree in meringue. First of all, you have to know that I have any conflict of interest, and as Lina said, I am currently a PhD student involved in the project OSIRIS, which have been funded by the European Union. Okay, first of all, I think obviously all of you know this paper by John Ioannidis, who are saying that almost all the research and the published research are actually false. This is a very, very famous paper, which is, in my point of view, the beginning of the question about the reproducibility. And it has been viewed more than 3 million times, and actually took 70 years to detect that in that paper there is also a mistake. Maybe not a mistake, just a quote, but in fact there is some trouble with it. And but the stuff to say that there is some problem with the research publication might be something. And 10 years after, the Lancet editor states that the case against science is straightforward. Much of the science literature, perhaps half, maybe simply be untrue. So in the research field, they have some question about the reproducibility, as all of you know, I guess. And it has been pointed by this really famous survey where at least almost 19% of the researchers agree to say that there is some problem with reproducibility, and there might be a reproducibility crisis actually. The problem with reproducibility is that it can be difficult to talk to people about and to explain what it is. That's why Steve Goodman, Daniel Fennelly, and John Ioannidis wrote this paper to describe it and to give a definition to it. At least maybe not one definition, but 3 different definitions with the method reproducibility, defined by the fact providing enough detail about the study, procedure, or data. So the same procedure could, in theory or in actually, be exactly repeated. And on the other hand, there is also the result reproducibility, which refers to obtaining the same result from the conduct and of an independent study whose procedure are as closely matched to the original experiment as possible. And finally, the inferential reproducibility, which this one refers to the drawing of qualitatively similar conclusion from either an independent replication of a study or a reanalysis of the original study. Okay, now I think all of you know that since the 1st December, we moved to the advanced season, and at the lab, we've moved from thinking about this reproducibility crisis and find some way to fix it to more thinking about all this Christmas stuff, the Christmas dinner and Santa's list. And last year, we found on the social media this wonderful picture of Christmas tree in meringue, and we decided to cook it for our Christmas dinner. So as we are researchers, the first step we did was to do a literature review to find a way to cook it. So we moved to Google and try to find a good recipe to cook the Christmas tree in meringue. Several recipes have been to our research, and we decided to choose the first one, which looks like the most as what we was expecting of the Christmas tree in meringue. So now we have our recipe. We have all the steps that we need to cook the Christmas tree in meringue. First of all, beat the white egg, and then add the sugar, add the color stuff, shape the meringue, and then put it to the oven. And at the end of the day, it is exactly the same as the method reproducibility. You have all the steps that you need to reproduce exactly the research for the science part. And here we have all the steps to reproduce our Christmas tree in meringue. But the problem with that is that at each step, you have different possibilities. Like for the first one, you can use different type of beater. How long are you going to beat the egg? What kind of sugar, and so at the end of the day, you have 48 degrees of freedom to interpret this recipe, and it is absolutely the same as for the research. If the information about the experiments are not enough detail, you can have some degree of freedom. And the result was absolutely not what we was expecting for. And this is the result reproducibility. We try to reproduce exactly what using the exact same method, but actually we failed. And at the end, you can't even present it to your family for the Christmas dinner, so it finished in the bin. And this is international reproducibility for negative result. Most of them will never be published and share with the other researcher. And to be absolutely transparent, the meringue that I showed you before wasn't mine. That was Fran's meringue. And for his Christmas dinner 2 years ago, he didn't present that meringue, but he presented that wonderful Yule log. And all his family was really happy with this Yule log and makes a lot of compliment on it. But he never gave us the actual recipe for his Yule logs, maybe like a little bit of transparency about it. So at the end of the day, making some Christmas tree in meringue is like trying to replicate science. You have some bad method reproducibility, which lead to bad result reproducibility. And at the end of the day, you have a quite bad inferential reproducibility. So the mission behind our study, we decided to really design a study with the highest level of needed experiences. So we have two missions. The first one was to increase the reproducibility of Christmas tree in meringue, and the second one to communicate with general public about the reproducibility or in the non-reproducibility. Our initial hypothesis was the fact to using the TIDieR reporting guideline to improve the reproducibility that means the method reproducibility may lead to more appeal and sweeter meringue. That means increase the result reproducibility to obtain a broad consensus of agreement that they need to be eaten. At the end, we will increase the inferential reproducibility. So to do it, we realize prospective superiority, single-blind, and cluster-randomized control trial, which took place in Rennes from the 9th to the 13th January 2024. We use exactly the same practices as we use for clinical trials. So we get an ethical approval. We prospectively register our study on the Open Science Framework, and we use the Spirit guideline to write the protocol, and use the Consort guideline and its extension to cluster randomized control trial to report our result. And obviously, all our data are openly shared on the Open Science Framework. So now we have our ID, but the first step was to realize a little preliminary study to determine how many bonding shifts we need to include to our study. So with some colleagues at the lab, we realized some Christmas tree in meringue, and it allowed us to understand that we have a really high intra-cluster correlation that we have to take into account with 0.75. Sorry, and and an expected effect size that we want to increase the general aspect by 0.5. So at the end of the day, the number of bending chief needed was 60, which means 30 per group. For the control, we use the exact same recipes that I showed you before. It is a basic recipe that you can find on internet. And for it, in the interventional group, we use the recipe improved by the TIDieR guideline, plus a video which detailed each step to cook the Christmas tree in meringue. So to improve our recipe, we ask the help of a pastry chef. We moved to his lab and he showed us how to cook the Christmas tree meringue. It allowed me to take the video, to create it and put it on YouTube after. And also he helped us to increase our recipe using the TIDieR guideline. We also realized in a second preliminary study, which took place in Louvain, in Belgium, with some colleagues of us from the Osiris project. And this time it was more to explore the feasibility of the study. And the result after this who come to us, it was that it is really difficult to really implicate people to come and to cook the Christmas tree meringue and to bring back the meringue after. In their study, initially, they was expecting 15 family to be involved in the study, but finally only 8 of them came. So that's why we screened during December 2023 a lot of students, actually in the healthcare student of pharmacy, odontology, and midwifery and medicine from Rennes. We also ask the help of some colleagues to be included and some friends and neighbors. The selection criteria behind it was the fact to have some basic skills of cooking. We tested by asking them if they are able to cook some chocolate cake. They also have to add a kitchen and the necessary utensil to bake the Christmas tree in meringue. That means a beater and an oven. And we also ask them to write their consent. And for the non-inclusion criteria, to avoid any risk of food poisoning, we exclude all the people who have burned some pasta in the past months. And finally, they could not be involved in the organization of the study. We also ask them to do not communicate between each other and to not go on internet to find another recipe, but to strictly follow the recipes that they will receive. Okay, for the sample size, as I told you, the number of needed bending shift was 60, and it represents the randomization unit. And the number of meringues that we was expecting from them was 15 plus 1 from each batch, which may represent for the primary outcome 900 meringues for and this is the analysis unit. When we receive all that meringue, what we can do, with this, we decided to create an event which took place in Rennes at the entrance of a big library, which name is Les Champs Libres. So this event took place in last January, and we present all the meringue on a chess table, and we was at the entrance trying to attract people to come to see us and to talk about reproducibility with them. And that's it. So all the bending chief was randomized. Then the randomization was realized by Florian and put it in seal number opaque envelope. So when someone was randomized, he received a batch with the opaque envelope and inside the recipe of the correct group that he have been involved for, and all the ingredients needed to cook the Christmas tree in meringue. And as Christmas is a question of family first, the quality check have been realized by Florian and his 8-year-old daughter. For the outcome, we judges the meringue using for the primary outcome the general aspect, visual aspect, and for the secondary outcome, the size, the color, the taste. That means from each batch, one meringue have been took to be taste and rate. And finally, we did also a survival analysis, survival time before purchase. For the assessor, we invited some independent expert jury, which assessed the 900 meringue about the visual aspect, color, size, and taste. Okay, to be absolutely transparent, they are absolutely not experts. They are just the member of my family. So as I said before, Christmas is first of all something about family. And to assess the survival time, we organize a big sale of our Christmas tree in meringue. After the jury have been able to coat each meringue, we started the sale, and all the money moved to the association of Tutorat Rennais. It's an association from medical student, which helps the first year of medical student at the university. And contrary to popular belief, a short survival time in our study was indicates a better outcome. And finally, our study was an opportunity to talk about reproducibility with people. So during the afternoon, we met a lot of people, and a lot of them came to talk with us about the reproducibility, but also about science, and just to let them know what we are doing actually. And finally, for the statistical analysis, it was performed in intention to it. That means that all the meringue included in the study were analyzed according to the initial randomization of the bending chief. The analysis was realized blinded from the interventional group. And for general aspect, color, and size, we used a generalized linear mixed model with a random effect as bending chief to take into account the cluster nature of the data. T-test was used to compare the test, and finally, the survival data was presented using a Kaplan-Meier curve and a Cox-Shell-Felty model. And we presented during the event, we also invited all the people to come to the presentation of the result. So we organized a public webinar where in live, we analyze the data, and Florian unblinding the randomization list. So previously to this webinar, I did the analysis code using generated data, and the day of the event, the day of the webinar, he unblinded the randomization list, so I've been able to interpret and see the true result at the same time of the public. Okay, now I'm going to present you all the results. So first of all, this is as you can see that we try to invite a lot of people, around 2,000, but only 76 of them respond to us to be interesting in be involved in the study, and at the end, only 60 of them was randomized. 30 in the control group and 30 in the intervention group. The population characteristic between both groups was quite the same, and Alban Chief brought us meringue in time, so we was lucky about it. But 38 of them cook at least 60 meringues. That means the 15 meringues that have been put on the table plus the one tasted by the jury, and 20 of them cook less than 16 meringues. And for that one, we picked one from the table to be tested by the jury, and for the survival analysis, have been considered as censored. So at the end, we get from the bending chief 848 cooked meringue, which have been randomly presented on the chest table, but sadly 3 of them have been misplaced, so the jury have been able to analyze only 845 of them. Now, the result of the primary outcome about the visual aspect. The best way to present it is obviously a forest plot of Christmas tree and meringue. But sadly, it was not a significant result. We have not been able to show any differences between the two groups about the visual aspects. For the secondary outcome, it is exactly the same. We have not been able to show any differences about color, size, or taste. And for this survival analysis, 400 meringues have been sold. 16 of them have been had two survival time due to mistakes, so they have been censored. So at the end of the day, we have 384 events, and in the control group 209, and the interventional group 175, and any differences between the two groups. During the event, for the price of the meringue, we put it free price, so the people are aware that the money they gave us was for the tutorat Rennais. So they give us what they want, and we've been able to get 283 euro, which go to the tutorat Rennais association, of course, and obviously to avoid the research waste, the unsold meringue have been distributed at the end of the event. Okay, now let's talk about the discussion. The main results that we get is that we failed to improve the reproducibility of Christmas tree in meringue. We could have PIAC and try to find some significant result on a subgroup analysis, like for example, for the experienced bending chief. But we truly think that our Christmas tree in meringue deserve better than it. And the main point was maybe not the result, but more the method. And on the other hand, our study was also a true success, as we've been able to really communicate with the general public about science and reproducibility, and a lot of people came to us and they was really happy about it. We also failed to publish it for the moment, but we shared it as a preprint on Meta Archive. And on the other hand, 2 articles in local newspaper have been published around our study. And there is another surprise which are coming soon in the month of December. For the interpretation, as we can see, the gold standard seems maybe a little bit unattainable, as no meringue was rated as perfectly reproduced. So maybe the problem with the picture considered as a gold standard that it doesn't take into account the variability, and even the bakery wasn't able to do exactly the same meringue each time when he cook it for us. So it could have been one of the trouble with our study. And also it show an embellished, idealized pin craft version of the Christmas tree in meringue, and maybe it is also the case in the biomedical research, as you on the journal, most of the research that you can read are the positive and the positive one. So large dose of Christmas magic are needing to reproduce the results of the Christmas tree in meringue, and also maybe of the biomedical research. There is also some limitation around our study. The power might have been affected, as only 845 meringue instead of 900 have been brought back by the bending chief. And there is also an imperfect inter-rate agreement that could have impacted the power. There is also the fact that we have a very high intercluster correlation, but it was indispensable to do this kind of design to avoid meringue waste. And it also have been took into account during the sample size calculation. There is also the question about the design, as we don't really know if it's really a cluster randomized control trial or more a control trial with some cluster data. And finally, the intervention wasn't limited to using a reporting guideline, as we put in the video, but our results are actually negative, so even the video wasn't able to increase the reproducibility of our meringue. Now a little bit about the perspective. All of you know the Equator network, and they have more than 600 different reporting guidelines, which is maybe at the end of the day a little bit too much, but no one was perfectly matched to the meringue recipe. And if maybe we should have included only some experienced chief in our study, as it is implicitly the case for the reporting guideline, because using a reporting guideline obviously needing a little of experiences. And finally, no much evidence in the literature about the effect of reproducibility research practice exists, as any interventional study, or I don't know the one if there is some, exist about the open science practices or the effect of the open science practices on reproducibility. So to conclude, we failed to improve the reproducibility of Christmas tree in meringue. But at the end of the day, the more important is maybe not the result but more the method, as it is for the Fisher's Lady tasting tree, which allow to put into the norm the randomization. And on the other hand, obviously, our study was also a succeed, as we've been able to communicate to general public about reproducibility and science, and it's not over. And finally, I think the open science need a more interventional study and not only about Christmas tree in meringue this time. And that's what we are trying to do with the Osiris project. And to finish, I wanted to show you the improvement between the first meringue Florent cooked and the last one he did. So, and to finish with the quote from Irakli Loladze, sorry for the pronunciation, the reproducibility is like brushing your teeth. It is good for you, but it takes time and effort. Once you learn it, it becomes an habit, and I will change it a little bit to this quote, as the reproducibility is like making Christmas tree in meringue. The first time it feels like Christmas magic, but when you learn it, it became more a delightful reality. Thank you for your attention.